without the show, but there are a lot of other things that I would not have been willing to sacrifice. If I had been given the option, I would not have wanted my birth filmed. I would not have wanted these private, emotional teenage moments filmed. My relationship with my parents, I would say it's more complicated. With my dad, it's difficult. We don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, so I don't have one-on-one contact with him at all.
Hey friends, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It's Wednesday, September 6th, 2023, and I hope you are having a wonderful day. Miss Jill Duggar Dillard and Derek Dillard gave an interview to People magazine because next week, I don't know if you can believe it, but her new book, Counting the Costs, will be out. If you haven't picked up a copy of her book, you can pick it up through Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and I think she's got a link on her Instagram where you can find out where you can maybe buy a signed copy even too. And the book comes out September 12th. In her new interview, she discussed her reasons for wanting to write this book, a balance between trying to remain private but also have her story told in a way it was in her own words. She opened up about the complicated dynamics with her family, with her father, even discussing her anger with her brother Josh, and how the reality television show almost destroyed their marriage. This is a packed interview. There's also a 6-minute video that's on that People website that details some of the components, although People never actually shares the full interview, and so they want to keep you reading in their magazine. So Jill Duggar's book is going to be extremely anticipated by those of you that follow the Duggar family. She promises to tell the full truth and not hide anything about her time on Counting On. Apparently, the show was a huge wake-up call because it almost destroyed their family. She said this: "It caused a lot of frustration in our marriage, especially early on, where we would feel a certain way about filming something. I'd be like, I hear you. I feel you. I don't want to do whatever it is that you're asking us to do either, but we have to." Due to the way that she was raised in the IBLP, where you're supposed to honor your father and mother no matter what, even as an adult, and basically do what they say, apparently she had a really hard time saying no to her father because obviously, based on the teachings, your father is your umbrella of authority, and saying no to him would put you in destruction and fear of satanic forces. So she said that the show became a huge obstacle with her and Derek because she had a hard time saying no to him, and also setting boundaries with her father and the show's demanding film requests. She said, "It definitely got between us. No matter your age, you are to obey your parents' wishes, and you have to even ask them for their blessing for any major moment in your life. That could be buying a house, moving to a different state, where do you go to school?" We were dealing with all of this a lot when we were trying to make decisions for our family, and we were really wrestling back and forth with it.
Reach out to her individually, and he knew her buttons because she's his daughter, and knew
It's a cyclical
knew
thing.
the history. Play these really emotional buttons.
I have to say,
This apparently caused a lot of friction between her and Derek, and as they became more and more independent, obviously wanting to become adults and have their own life and not have mom and dad interfering in all of their day-to-day decisions, it created a lot of friction, and it also became more hostile with Jim Bob. So this is what Derek says: "Whenever we were at odds with what her dad thought we should be doing with filming, he would say things that would be very damaging. He would weaponize the relationship and say, 'Is this you, Jill? Or is this you, Derek? Are you really leading your wife astray and doing things that are not supporting a marriage?' And I think that was a big red flag." Can you imagine your father-in-law saying something like that? Oh, I would be like, it's like very manipulative. It's very like condescending. It's very like, bless your heart. Jim Bob and Michelle responded to a comment by people. This is what they had to say. He says, "We love all of our children very much. As with any family, few things are more painful than conflicts or problems among those you love. We do not believe the best way to resolve conflicts, facilitate forgiveness and reconciliation, or to communicate through difficulties is through the media or in a public forum, so we will not comment." It's always amazing that the family who wanted no privacy and had their lives filmed now wants privacy once other people are setting a narrative that doesn't match theirs. This is so common in cases like this. She apparently mentions that there was apparently a huge argument at one point, and this happened between her and Derek, and it was also related to her dad, and she felt like she had to pick sides. She said, "I saw so deeply. We were in an argument one time, and I was like, whoa, this is not okay." She recalls of her and Derek arguing over the show and the subsequent arguments they had with Jim Bob about eventually getting paid for her years of work on it. When I saw how it was affecting our marriage, I think that was another wake-up call for me. I was like, okay, we need to either fight this battle together or it's going to rip us apart. So yeah, we had to join forces at this point. She addressed naysayers in the interview, basically saying that there's going to be people that want her to be private, or that are going to say, well, you want privacy, but now you're doing public. And she said that she felt called to do this. And she said, we really wanted to tell our story for my siblings because some of them are going to face similar challenges, if they haven't already, to what I've faced. So it seems her book, to tell her side of the story and to get the truth out of what she experienced, is not just about, setting the record straight of her own story, but also to maybe help open the eyes up of her siblings. She talked about in the interview that her relationship with her parents is strained, that she will see her mom from time to time, but at this point she has no direct one-on-one contact with her dad, which means she's basically not on speaking terms with him and has deemed that he is not a safe person for her to talk to. She credits therapy as being a way to help her come through a lot of these problems, and even to be able to acknowledge and say, like, I don't speak to my dad is a very hard thing for her to say, because it would be a negative reflection on him because of the way she was brought up in the IBLP. She said, therapy was the gift we didn't know we needed. We initially went into with the goal of reestablishing a relationship with my parents. But once we got there, the therapist was like, I think we maybe need to do a little more processing, a little more sorting out here. You guys need to figure out who you are, which was so wise, and it helped us so much.
With my mom, like, I've seen my mom and some of my sisters at birthday get-togethers and stuff. Some of my other siblings are supportive, kind of behind closed doors a little, and then other ones have concerns, and I see them and I feel that too. I think to myself, I'm like, I was in their shoes not long ago, so I realize that and I feel that, and for the long haul, I don't want to single them out and make them feel bad.
Her parents actually declined to be a part of the therapy. She had started the therapy years before because of the issues they were having about the show. And I think in general, it's probably been very challenging because this is a family that says that they want to be united and they want to be they wanted to show like the face of happiness, because that's what the IBLP does. And when it came right down to it, when they had the opportunity to go to a counselor to help them speak and learn how to communicate, Jim Bob didn't want anything to do with it. So Jim Bob interfering in their relationship is a huge factor. Being forced to be on a show that they didn't want to be a part of, that's a large commitment of 20 hours per week. That's part-time employment for 10 years of your life. And you're on a show, so obviously you would think, gosh, if someone has a television show, they would have money after 10 years, right? Like, they should have a lot of money in their bank. And that's just not the case, because obviously Jim Bob didn't want to pay his kids. It's just, it's incredibly disturbing to me. She also touched on her relationship with Josh, or how she feels about him. And this is something that I think is a little bit interesting because, obviously Jill found herself in a situation where her dad made the decision to put her on a television show, despite the fact that her older brother, and his son had done things to his daughters. So he made the decision to move forward with a television show, even though they had just gone through an investigation with Josh and they didn't move forward with charges. But even though all of that was in their background, he still decided to move forward with the show, making them public, putting exposure on his family, right? Opening up their family to a world of inquiry and interest. And the painful aspect of what Josh did to her was obviously a violation, but she feels it sounds like she feels very violated still to this day about her violation of privacy related to a police report being released, which a lawsuit was actually dismissed back in 2022. And she touches on her anger at Josh and why she's angry at him. So she says she's still processing everything that happened with her oldest brother. She said it's still really upsetting. And in her book, she writes about the pain that she and her 3 sisters felt when a judge dismissed their invasion of privacy lawsuit in 2022, the one that they filed against the individuals who they believe released these records illegally, which detailed what Josh had done to them. So the case never went to trial. Josh was never charged due to some weird loophole of a statute of limitations, which never should have existed in the first place. And he was never charged. He was never held accountable. The case ultimately was closed and handled in juvenile court. And those records technically were juvenile records, but when Josh was under investigation, he was an adult. It created a lot of confusion for the police department on how to handle these the FOIA requests. But she feels violated that those records got out. Derek said they were told as kids, this is a safe place, what you say is safe, and it wasn't true. So Jill revealed that the lawsuit that she had ended up getting dismissed, and she believes it had to do with Josh and his conviction and sentencing. And that was why her attorney believed that the case was ultimately dismissed. Now, the case was dismissed not because of Josh's conviction. It was to do with that the judge ruled that the workers did not have malice. They didn't do it intentionally. The release of records was not vindictive, and that they had immunity, and that they believed they had to release the records or they would get in trouble legally. That was like all what came out of it. That was what was in the report. But Jill's point of view was our attorney said Josh's sentencing was basically the nail in the coffin for our case. It was the same judge that handled his case. But there's no reason it shouldn't have gone to a jury trial. It was just one of those moments with Josh that was yet again disappointing. So Josh was arrested while their lawsuit was still going on. And more details about what he'd done to his sisters became public in the trial. And so obviously it does sort of put a nail in the coffin because his crimes were then in a court of law became statements of fact. And they determined that because of testimony by Bobby Holt, that Josh had committed SA in the second degree. And so it would put the invasion of privacy kind of to rest in that respect. But the lawsuit was a titch more complicated than that. But she said that she's still angry at Josh for what he's done. But she said it's not a bad thing. She said people are quick to say, oh, anger is bad. But I'm like, no, anger can be a good thing, especially when it propels you to advocate for people finding their voice. She said, you have to say, you know what, even though this system failed us as victims and our desire for justice and all of the people who just used and abused their positions and were not held accountable, we are still going to fight for victims' rights through Derek's lines of work. And Derek said, I work with victims now every day and try to make sure the same thing doesn't happen to them. We want to try and protect them and actually try to make sure that we can follow up and be genuine when we say this is a safe place. He also added that they believed that they were protected when they gave their statements against their brother to the police, and they were still minors, which is why they were disappointed that the report was ever made public in the first place. And Jill said, we hope and pray that going forward that nobody ever has to be in that position that we were in. I knew that writing this book, we would have to address some of that, but I didn't want to go and rehash everything in detail because it's a very sensitive place for me. It was stuff that never should have been released in the first place, so yes, it still makes me so upset. I don't know if the interview contained her thoughts about his new crimes or if they addressed that at all in the book. I don't know if she even speaks to what happened with Josh. I don't know if she holds anger at Josh at what he did to her. I don't know if she has anger towards her father for what happened. I will say that the justice system did fail her with not holding Josh accountable and dismissing this case and using a loophole to get out of it and not charge him. Josh should have been charged And under the law at the time, there was really no reason why he shouldn't have been charged. It's just, it's really sick in that respect. The release of records would obviously feel like a huge violation to her. And it's a point where her most private pain became public and her private story became public for everyone to discuss. And then once Josh got arrested again, it again reopened the situation that happened to her. And she was prepared to testify in court against her brother about what he had done to her. And she didn't have to because of Bobby Holt's testimony. I have such deep empathy for her. It has to have been a very, very, very challenging path to walk, and a father that decided to make her public. And I do still wonder, like, where, and if she'll address where she sees her dad's responsibility in that. Like, does she see that her dad sort of invited this in by, in a way, bringing them onto a show, knowing what Josh had done? Like, Jim Bob knew what was in their, what skeletons were in their closet. And these were concerns that his friends had about them doing the show. And then I wonder what anger she has towards Josh outside of the fact that it ruined her getting justice or having success in this lawsuit. I wonder what anger she has for him in regards to, like, his continued crimes and his continued abuse of people. I wonder what she feels about that. And she might never tell us, but it's got to be a tough balancing act because she has public information, private information about a crime that happened to her became public. She's on a show when all of this is happening. Her dad forces her to defend the family. And then Josh gets arrested while the lawsuit's happening, which eventually the lawsuit gets dismissed in the middle of all of it. It's sad overall. So Jill's book will drop on September 12th, 2023, and I'm excited to read it. It's actually good to hear her say that she's not on good terms with her dad. That doesn't make me happy that she's not on good terms with her dad, but the fact that she can vocalize that in a way where she can say it without feeling bad about it. Like, yeah, my dad and I have a complicated relation. Yeah, I don't talk to my dad one-on-one. She would have never said that a couple years ago. And Jim Bob and Michelle obviously saying that they want to do this privately when the truth is they don't want to do this privately. So good for Jill and Derek. I'm excited to read the book, and I'd love to know what your thoughts are about all of this. Tell me in the comments below. Bye, guys.